Okay, welcome back for this exciting new panel, Innovation Strategies of Public and Private Radio. So I have the pleasure of welcoming Olle from Swedish Radio, Francesco from Pubblicità, Chris from BBC England, and finally, Christian from RTL Radio Deutschland. So this panel will be moderated by Monique van Dusseldorp. Monique, screen is all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, fantastic panel you have. We're going to talk about the challenges and opportunities for European broadcasters in this hour. And let's first get to meet the people that we have here. Christian, start with you, Chief Digital Officer of RTL Radio Deutschland. I mean, briefly, what do you guys do?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, we basically oversee all the digital activities in Germany from an audio and broadcasting side, and this includes the existing radio stations. We have 17 radio stations across Germany, and it's pretty much a transformation process. And on the other hand, we also develop a lot of new audio in terms of podcasting, in terms of national brands and cross-divisional brands, and that's the kind of the two areas we're active in.
So you take your radio stations to the new digital world and you develop new formats and platforms to use. We'll talk about that more later on. Since the title is Challenges and Opportunities, what is your biggest challenge right now for the group or for your particular area in the group?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that you ask for challenges first.
The opportunities will come, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we see definitely a lot of opportunities, but of course we are facing a couple of challenges. We see, especially with the transformation part of the business, that we also have to transform people. So it's not only about the transformation of technology, it's also about driving.
Your own staff, you mean, your own people?
Yeah, old stuff sounds a bit, yes. Yeah. It's in many cases also new stuff, because a lot of the capabilities and strength we would really like to transform into a new world. But of course, this is a journey. And honestly, a second challenge is that especially in the digital space, in times when audio is so booming, we are facing a lot of competition, a lot of great ideas from others, and it's an increasingly competitive landscape. And although the whole kind of cake is getting bigger, the individual stake is also getting smaller. And I would say this is one of the biggest
and is the staff you try to hire or educate, are they also getting more expensive? Is it actually on that level that there's already a fight going on for the best audio talent out there?
Yes, I can definitely say this is the case, especially in areas where we compete with bigger companies, where we're also competing for bigger audiences and let's say bigger reach and bigger scope of our product. And of course, talent and let's say the bone, the content, the thing that makes people listen or use something is very valuable, and there aren't endless talents, and it's a
it's a good market for talent right now. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for people with a lot of energy there. Let's first meet the other people in the panel. Chris Burns, BBC England, and you're head of audio and digital for BBC England, so you have a pretty wide remit as well. What do you do first, and then of course
what do I do? So
exactly.
I'm basically responsible for the 39 local radio stations across England, and our content, whether that be on the linear or on the digital. So that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, but there's also, I guess, if you're on that high level, it's also getting a lot of talent in, and
absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting you mentioned talent, because I think one of the things that we're learning or doing much more of is looking for different places to recruit that talent. Because actually what you're looking for are great communicators, and they can be in many, many different areas. And maybe traditionally we'd looked at music presentation, if I look now, you can find live performers in a whole variety of different spaces, and training those people in audio skills as well gives you a really fresh voice. And I think,
can you give an example of an unexpected find?
Well, it's not unfortunately one that we found in England, but one that people who I think is absolutely brilliant is there's a guy who makes podcasts called George the Poet. And George the Poet was one of those figures that kind of came to prominence, interestingly, during the 2012 Olympics. And recently we had our own across England awards program called the Arias, which are run by the Radio Academy. And George the Poet swept the board. Who would have thought that it was going to be a poet?
I love that, you know, I love that.
And I think that's great. And certainly what, you know, I've learned a lot from that. And one of the initiatives we run across England is called New Voices. And that's all about finding different talent from different spaces. And, you know, we've had people who've had no broadcasting experience at all, but what they've got is that ability to tell a story. And that's really exciting. We're tapping into that.
Okay, so you actually seem to have the talent part pretty good. What is the biggest challenge you have?
I think our biggest challenge, I mean, I would agree with Christian to a certain extent. It's, yes, we've got the talent there, and I believe we've got the stories there. And I also think that what's happened over the last 12 months is because of lockdown and the pandemic, I think local has actually increased in importance and community has increased in importance. But what we've also got to make sure is that we're in the places and our stories are in the places where people across all generations are searching. Sometimes that might be the linear, but if I look at our, you know, our online listening and online searches over the last 12 months, that's increased by 1/3. So we need to be alive to all of those things. So it's making sure that, if you like, our stories don't get stuck within a cul-de-sac, but they're everywhere, and we put content on all platforms. And I think that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah, and it's a big choice that all broadcasters need to make, right? Are we going to go on other people's platforms? Are we going to focus on our own? Olle, Zachrison, Swedish radio. You are also head of digital news strategy and deputy news commissioner, so you have more of a news background. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Swedish Radio before we, you know, get to the challenge?
Yeah, basically my job is to try to engage our audience more around our digital news content. So basically that is what I work with. We have a strategy where we kind of divide our audio offering up into 3 different categories: live linear, and then podcasts, and then short form audio. News clips that we believe a lot in, these kind of atomized clips.
You have really short format, right? You have the shortest format of anybody in this panel. If I'm
actually, I mean, those news clips are range from between 20 seconds to 2 minutes, and we kind of package them into news playlists in our app. So every kind of news clip is treated like a song on Spotify, basically. And we have had a really big success with these playlists. So I've been working a lot with that, but of course also with kind of different platform strategies and all those kind of issues that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think we will come to that later on as well. In one segment, everybody has the same challenges. In another segment, everybody has their own unique new things. And I think for this European audience, it's really interesting to see what's happening. What's the biggest challenge you have at Swedish Radio?
I would say it is to engage the audience on our platform, like in our app and on our website, because I mean, audio is people are used to it being a kind of free commodity that you can listen to anywhere, like on iTunes, Podcaster, and on Spotify. So, for example, all the Swedish radio content almost is available on Spotify, and of course, a lot of people prefer listening on other platforms where they can also get their music. So for us to kind of re-engage them on our platform and to kind of consume and to give them an added value on our platform, that is one of our biggest challenges.
Your goal is to get everybody to your own platform, ideally.
More, at least.
Yeah, more. Okay, Francesco, you also have a really interesting, set of responsibilities, because you're director of radio, digital, and cinema. So you even have cinema as a platform and the distribution channel. Tell us a little bit, and this is at RAI, the Italian public broadcaster. Tell us a little bit what you do.
Oh, Monique, thanks Zachrison also for the invitation, and good afternoon, everybody. So it's a very, very amazing moment in the Italian market. Just to give you an idea, talking about the classic listener, we reach 33 million listeners on a daily basis, with 3.5 hours time budget. So it's an important number. But An important thing is that more than 50% of this listener is also listener that listen the radio on the digital platform. So this is a first KPI, very, very important. There's a very fast evolution in this medium, in this area, and the new technologies, of course, drive this evolution. And an important thing is that all the new technology, that means connected car, smart speaker, digital, 5C, boost very, very fast this new positioning. So another important thing is that most important thing that the listener looking for is the quality of the content and the original content. So we have such a very important double new positioning in terms of technology. Consider that the usage from smartphone increased 70%. We have more than 75% people connected.
Ooh, it's a phone ring.
Yeah, it's a huge number. The percentage the listen to radio from the net is more than 10%. And another important thing, we had an interesting event this morning in Milan, in Italy, discussing about the new technologies and connected TV and also radio and podcast. 24% of the internet user got a smart speaker. Smart speakers is another
so completely new format and a new platform for you to
So then
but we'll go into those platforms in a second. So you are basically overviewing all the content towards all those new platforms, and you also doing digital radio, visual radio, sound, podcast. It's a lot. What is the biggest challenge you have at the moment? And then we'll dive deeper into those formats. And
it's very important because as I say, I think there is a double change in technology and in content. You know what I mean? So the challenge is to find the right positioning, the right language for different platforms. So as you know, we have digital radio, we have a vertical digital channel. We have to talk with more users as we can. And there is an important challenge that we have seen, of course, also on video and digital, is the young people. Because I've seen on the video and the digital, the new content, the snack content, the new technology, the small screen.
That sounds like an opportunity, not a challenge. What is the difficult part the
difficult, yes, you are right. The difficult part is for a brand as RAI, very focused on different positioning. We are news, entertainment, and cultural aspect with RAI 3, but consider the Italian market is very polarized on entertainment. So we compete day by day with commercial radio that in Italy has a huge number of audience. So I think that using this kind of new platform, digital activity, positioning on social, visual radio is something that can help us to move a little bit our positioning and cover new generation. This is the challenge with, as I told you before, new language, new platform, and new engaging with the new user, with the podcast.
Okay, let's go into the discussion here. So I think on the very basic level, everybody understands. Okay, you have a broadcaster. There's a new podcasting wave. Let's do podcasting, and we will usually start with putting the 16 radio stations on demand, all the shows on demand. So that's a good start, and finding out you can also do more things. But what I think would be interesting to discuss, because I think most of the audience will understand that and get it, is actually, okay, that's not all. Because there seems to be a whole new audio space opening up, which is also in the format and the platform different than just a podcast or a radio station. So I'm interested to hear from you guys, what are the things you are seeing that are new? I mean, we had earlier this year, we had a sudden rise and then fall of the Clubhouse network. But the idea that there's conversational spaces opening up in the audio landscape, but there's also, the whole smart speaker audio part there? Is that interesting or not? Should we care or not? You have the cars, you have DAB. Who wants to go first and say, okay, what we see, what is new and that we want to explore is this particular space in the audio market? Who wants to go first there? I know you all do interesting things. Chris, you do interesting things really being on the ground there, right?
I mean, I think it's a case of probably finding the right platform from the right piece of content. And I'm not trying to fudge your question at all there. So, I mean, I talked earlier on about how we've seen during the pandemic the importance of localness, and I genuinely believe that. And you know how one of the things that we did during that period is we launched an initiative called Make a Difference. And what Make a Difference did was it was really trying to tap in those Facebook communities that grew up very, very quickly during the first lockdown in March of last year. You've just mentioned there.
That's interesting. Facebook for you. Facebook is a really important platform.
Yeah, Facebook is still important. Oh, bless you. And I think, you know, I know there are lots of other platforms available, and I talk to presenters and they'll say, well, Chris, what about TikTok? What about Instagram? What about this? What about Twitter? Twitter, I tend to see more in terms of journalism. Facebook, actually, it's a conversation. It's also quite a broad cross-section of people who are still using Facebook. So it remains important for us in terms of what we're doing. But just going back to the other point you mentioned in terms of smart speakers. Now, one of the things, again, we launched earlier this year was people can now get bulletins from their area wherever they live via their smart speakers.
And do they use that? Because I think there's a lot more offer than
it's there, and I think there's a slow sort of take up in it. But what that enables us to do, and I think this picks up on something Francesco was talking about, I would say for me, BBC Local Radio, there's an image people have of what we do, and then there's the reality of what we do. And by actually making our content available on something like Voice, that enables us to reach a slightly different audience, because a younger audience is potentially not going to listen to a long breakfast show, but they will want to know the 5 key things going on in their area. They may not want to listen to a long afternoon show, but they'll want to know their football results. And it's really interesting, you know, podcasts and sport, particularly in those clubs that are, it's not your Chelseas and your Man Uniteds, it's your Leicester Cities, where you've got a real core fan base and they love that club wherever they live. It does tremendously well in the podcast space. And that again takes us to different audiences. So I think it's about the right content on the right platform, and that actually enables us to broaden our appeal. But picking up on Olle's point, actually what we also want to make sure is it's branded BBC Local Radio or BBC Radio Manchester, so we get the attribution back. And that starts to change, I think, the mindset of what we potentially are.
And Olle, you wanted to respond to that, because I think this atomization that you've done of the news stream, for instance, also makes your audio content you know, useful for all kinds of different platforms, right? How do you see those platforms for Swedish radio?
Yeah, but one point that I want to make is that it doesn't matter if you do a 20-second long clip or a 45-minute podcast, you have to have a really engaging audio storytelling, and you have to tell your stories in a pretty new way if you compare to the traditional expression that we've had on linear broadcasting. For example, a lot of our research show that for our short news clips, if we don't make it completely clear in the first 8 seconds what the story is about, then people skip us. But if we make that clear, and if we have a really compelling start to the audio, then we have the best completion rate. So in a way, we have to reinvent how we tell those stories. And I also think that if you compare, like, for example, 3 or 5 years ago, then it was okay just to chuck a couple of clever people into a studio and they could chat away, you know? Yeah. And that's not good enough anymore. You really have to, people's expectancies of the production value of a particular audio piece is going up so much, you know? So we have to produce much more kind of well-produced formats with kind of a clever way to tell those stories.
Yeah, those formats. Do you adapt those formats to the different platforms out there? I mean, smart speakers or in-car experiences, or live radio on digital TV. They all seem to have a different logical format.
No, but I can just say a short thing about that is that we have maybe around 1,500 reporters in 26 local stations all around Sweden.
That's a lot.
Now they have to file every news item in what we call a standalone version, a version customized for digital consumption. So we don't just take the same audio nuggets that they do for linear. They have to produce a bit of audio which is self-explanatory and that can be understood without the traditional studio cue. Yeah. So that has been a very kind of big revolution in how we produce our audio to make it more kind of digital native.
Yeah. Christian, I'm sure those same questions are also true for RTL Radio, right? Because you're the only commercial broadcaster in this group. You don't just atomize for perfect use, you atomize to reach advertisers as well. So that's a completely additional lens on your audio content.
Yes, exactly. And I think we're seeing a big shift here in audio, and that's the shift from broadcasting to personal audio. And this applies to all the aspects. That means very different content approaches, very different, let's say, packaging and size of content, moment of delivery, distribution channels. So everything is much more driven by personal needs and interests. And this makes it much more demanding, because as you said, you have to have a fit between the right content and the right situation. And you mentioned smart speakers. Smart speakers is a perfect distribution platform for linear radio. And it's a horrible distribution platform for podcasts, because content curation, content exploration is just a mess on voice-enabled devices. Yeah, how can you find a good podcast? The good thing, because you mentioned the commercial aspect of it, is that we get much more touch points, and we get to know our listeners or users significantly better. So we can.
What are the touch points you get? Because you get what they listen to, when they listen to it, where they listen to it. I guess that's all part of it.
We live in the age of data, and we cannot have enough data, and sometimes you cannot say too loud, because we are hungry for data, and there are of course some limitations. But I think you mentioned the right dimensions. First of all, we now know what the exact user is using, and if it's a podcast about cars, it says something more about this person, whether it's just 1 out of 1 million listening to the same radio program.
Have you also, like Olle, started completely different ways of producing audio, or are you using new tech? The metadata, automatic recognition of themes. What is the technical background? But I think RTL is always pretty much ahead when it comes to tech development, right? So
yeah, I can give you an example we are experimenting with, and this is on our audio podcast platform, Audio Now, which aggregates our own contents, but also other publishers' content. And we know that there's a demand for certain length of content. So let's assume you're commuting in a car, and you have, let's say, 25 minutes of a typical commute time, but the podcast is 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And what we do is we actually offer different length of the podcast, and you can adapt your, let's say, commute needs or your lifestyle needs to the content you would like to consume. And that's kind of a dream. I mean, it can be an endless game. Yeah.
I mean, my dog is so happy when I hit the podcast I really like, because he gets an hour walk instead of the 20-minute walk. I mean, it works like this, right?
It's true. I mean,
habits expand around favorite content as well.
And sometimes it's the other way around.
So you automatically generate you can automatically generate the right length podcast for an individual person, is what you're saying.
Yes, and you can. So you can search for it in the app and on the platform. Although this is probably true to a tiny percentage of our actual outcome, I think we implemented this thinking on the producer side. So even if it's not automated in many cases, it reminds people on the producer side to think in, let's say, chunks, or to think of different versions of a content type, or a podcast in this case, and not this. It's 32 minutes because I ended up with 32 minutes approach. Yeah.
Francesco, I mean, I know you have at RAI experimented with different forms around audio content as well. I mean, and you also have cinema, because I think that was interesting. This morning we had a session where, for instance, a French podcast producer is also very much looking into books. You know, if you come from radio, you tend to think in audio only, but some of the podcasts are now building up brands that extend into, you know, different media types. At RAI, I know you do a lot of things with digital TV, adding audio there, and also launching podcasts based on TV programs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Consider, Monique, that we are public service. For this reason, we have to cover all different content for different targets. So this is our main goal for Italian people. It's very important because, as we said before, we touch different platforms. So our FM, classic radio, digital radio, social, and YouTube. So there's an important balance, because we are working on audio podcasts, on total audio, on new hub of total audio, where we want to share also, just to give you an idea, the video content, but in an audio version. So there's something like an hybridization of the content and the platform. So from radio to video, and from video to radio.
Can you do that with any video? Or I can imagine there's already a fantastically new area of rights settlements going on here, right? What happens if you only use the audio of a TV show and put that on a podcast? Who gets what?
We are testing, of course, with the product, with the marketing, what is the best content, television, video content that we can put in an audio version. You know what I mean? Yeah. Of course, as you know, there are several content. So we are testing the best content that we can bring from video and transfer just in an audio version. In the meantime, we are testing also the video. What happened? We started with the visual radio 2, that is Radio 2, the most music and entertainment. You know, the music and entertainment is the best content to be viewed. Remember MTV, and so we have a lot of example. And we open a live channel 24 hours a day on RAI Play, that is the video digital platform. So this is the test. And then we start to take 2 programs, always Radio 2, that means music, entertainment, one early morning and one late evening show. And we bring this content from the studio and we put live, but in the television classic channel, you know? So we have such a sort of mashup.
Yeah, it's a bit visual radio, TV, audio, it's in the middle.
And an important thing is also that we have 2 channels on YouTube, video channel, of course, and on one of the channel we put live radio content, and then of course we have the on-demand content, and of course we have social pages.
And it's interesting. I mean, strangely enough, I do that myself as well. I've got a playlist on YouTube, which is basically my radio channel in the background when I'm working. So I just, I mean, all that bandwidth wasted on video is absolutely not necessary. It's my radio playlist. A lot of people seem to be doing that. How many people are actually listening to your radio channel as distributed via YouTube?
Not small number. We are growing. Consider that we have a very, very big channel on YouTube. The main channel, of course, it's video. So we have more than 4 million subscribers. of course, the most of them link for the video, the television program, but the radio numbers still growing. As you know, once you have the product, you have to put online and communicate it. And another important thing is, just to give you an idea, we have an important profile on social, mainly on Facebook. Again, Radio 2, entertainment, music, has 1 million fans. And on March, when we had the song festival, most important Italian song festival, we reached almost 10 million videos. So yeah. It's sorry if I use this kind of words. It's like an ecosystem.
I'm watching the song festival all the time. You know, my favorite clip has 50 million views by now, so that's mostly me. There you go. Now, but
yeah,
so,
that's good.
but you have that goes for all of you. You have the landscape of online. I mean, all the public broadcasters in Europe put on, you know, fantastic show for the Eurovision Song Contest, and then the videos go online on YouTube. I mean, we're all working with the American platforms. It's, you know, that's the place where people go. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because you prefer everybody also in audio to be in your own platform. Are there platforms you don't want to work with? Or do you say, like Chris says, you know, we go where the people are, so be it?
You know, it's very important to have a new listener. So we have a very specific...
It's the marketing challenge, but basically you get them from there and try to get them.
Yeah, consider, just to give you an idea about the video strategy on YouTube, we don't have the live content, and then we don't have the full episode content on the YouTube channel.
You
so
limit what you show.
It's part of our content, and consider, I don't want to bother you and take time from my colleague, but YouTube for us works quite well on young target, and in specific content create a huge amount, a huge number, increasing number also on television share and audience.
For everybody. So there's the social media networks. Okay, there we go. There's the digital TV and radio. I mean, my kids, they're 14 and 18. They've never seen a standalone radio. It's never been in their household. I mean, radio is the car and the rest is the phone. I mean, radio's sort of, you know, fizzling away in this world of audio. But what new platforms are there? I know, Christian, in Germany, DAB is a platform worth of your attention, right? You work with that, you do that, even though you don't get the customer feedback that you would love to have as a private broadcaster. It's just, you know, broadcasting.
Yes, we're using it because it's a relevant channel in Germany now, and we try to use as many relevant channels as possible. Yeah, because what you were describing is the typical behavior of a modern audio user. You listen your playlist on YouTube, you walk your dog with podcast, and this is the environment we are facing and would like to serve. And DAB.
So the DAB part, is that mainly for the cars, or is it also, because there are DAB radios?
Yes,
there are people that buy them.
Cars play a role, but don't forget, let's say, normal radio sets, and it's totally correct that these dedicated devices are disappearing. I mean, and the younger you are, or at least once you move away from home, you don't buy your
I'm
radio.
55 and I don't have one, so there you go.
That's the first one. Yeah, as I said, you're a modern audio listener. But at the same time, there are many new devices as well, and nearly all of them have a DAB chip in it. So it's still a mass medium, and it's really distributed heavily, although of course many of the listening occasions happen in a digital environment.
Yeah. Olle, is that the same in Sweden, or is that not an area that you are personally concerned with? I know DAB is very much the technical department in many cases, and not so much the podcast content news department, so it's not relevant for everybody to look at.
Yeah. Well, the growth hasn't been so big in Sweden, even if we have, of course, our content is available on DAB. But with these kind of platforms, I think, I mean, the problems is not the multitude of platforms. The big challenge is finding a tone and a type of content that can, for example, engage a younger audience. You know, and therefore, I think what Francesco is saying, and also what Chris is saying, and and Christian is very good, that we just have to constantly try different methods, but don't forget that we want to give people something, no? It's not just a goal in itself just to reach people. We want to reach people with something meaningful, at least in our case, as a public service broadcaster. And what is that meaning that we can provide them, that we want them to listen to? Because if we can't offer that, maybe we don't deserve that audience. So I think it's always good, even if these kind of distribution and platform discussions are very, very important. We have to go back to that kind of the content question all the time, like what are we going to provide? And there, I think, for example, what Chris was saying with talent, that is a problem in, for example, our company. I mean, we expect 14-year-olds to listen to us, but we don't have any 14 or 15-year-olds employed here, and maybe we don't want that either, if you see what I mean. We're kind of adults, or sometimes old people like me with gray hair, who are trying to figure out ideas for what is best for the really young audiences, and we have to kind of find completely new strategies into doing that, I think.
And if you, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I think one of the interesting thing about the new platforms, if you like, that you've talked about, what's great about them is people get the audio habit. And that's a really, really important thing. And if we can get the content right, then you're absolutely right. I think we will keep that audience and we'll keep it going. And I think perhaps one of the things that we've started to do in local radio is actually open ourselves up a little bit more to all storytellers. So, yes, we have a lot of journalists, and journalism is a really important part of the local radio offer. But we have something called upload. And upload is a means by which performers and artists can actually hear their work on the radio, which will go to other platforms. So we're trying to make ourselves much more porous. And I think during lockdown, that was really important, because what we found was there was an explosion around creativity. So giving people an opportunity to actually tell their story their way, rather than having a journalist, if you like, in some way curate it. Yes, we curated by putting the best on air, but we did something called, we had an upload virtual festival, and literally thousands of people subscribed to the online webinars because they wanted to talk to each other about their creativity. So that's a way in which I think as a public service broadcaster, you maintain your relevance. So I think we have to be very open.
And I don't think I don't think these new forms are limited to public broadcasting either. I mean, there's this bringing people together around something they want to share, and I mean, the simple version is, a friend of mine has a very popular podcast who basically discusses a TV show. He's not connected to the TV show. They basically discuss the TV show. That's it. People love that.
It's fans. It's fans, and what you get is and I'm sure it's something we all want in our broadcasting, is an authenticity of voice. And actually, that's really important, because I think what younger audiences in particular respond to is authenticity. Make it real. Say it in a language that's relevant to me, rather than it being top down. You're my friend.
Yeah, but after that, when you found that voice and found the connection, you, as the broadcaster in this case, look for the right format, which in this case apparently was, let people upload things and then organize seminars for them. So you have to think of that.
Oh yeah, of course you do. You can then take it on. But I suppose the lesson we're all learning, and actually it's been true, I think, of radio since it started, we are a very agile technology. And I think we have to be open to the new and constantly be innovative. I say to my local radio editors, look, schedules are set in aspic at best. They're not set in stone. And I think we have to be open to new things, new voices, new talent at all times.
I like this expression, set in aspic. This is a new one to me.
But it's flexible.
Yeah, it's flexible. Okay, so audio as the space where more experimentation can far more easily happen than in video or in other areas, books, whatever. What new formats are coming up? I mean, there's two more things to discuss, and we have another 20 minutes. But I think that what is the biggest competition? I mean, this is still part of the challenge. Is the biggest competition, if it's other media companies, great, let's compete. Whoever makes the best format will win. But the competition these days seems to be in large-scale American-funded platforms that come for the talent, that come from the audience, that take all the audience data and so forth. Is there any attempt that you are aware of on a European, podcast connection audio level to sort of fight that, share formats, or I don't know, have a shared advertising market? Everybody tries now to do their own thing, right? I mean, RTL as well. You will try to be your own complete network now.
Well, I wouldn't say so, because what we did from the beginning was to really open to other publishers, especially with Audio Now as the podcasting platform. And we honestly teamed up with all the relevant publishers who used to be competitors.
So Audio Now is for the whole German market. Everybody.
For the whole German market, yeah. It's the biggest local podcast platform, and it includes podcasts from all big publishers in Germany. And
I remember in the UK you also had the public and private radios together in the same platform, right? It's not in every market like that. There's lots of markets where that doesn't happen.
Yeah. It was Radio Player that has been a platform for commercial and BBC services.
How does it work in Italy and in Sweden? Does that happen, that private and public parties work together in the same platform?
Yes, in Italy, yes. Radio Player 2 on Italian market is the biggest app, and there are 140 radio, different local and international, and we are in on different platforms. Yeah.
And Sweden, small market, but still.
Yeah, I mean, Swedish Radio has an open API, so everybody can carry our audio content, in their apps, and many others do. We don't distribute any audio content from, for example, commercial companies. Of course, that is one thing that we have been discussing. Should we kind of highlight the best podcast from others too? We're not doing it at the moment.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, a newspaper does that, but not the broadcaster.
Yeah. No, but one thing, just if I may, one point that I want to do is that, of course, the big competition is about people's time and where they devote what they devote their time to, and that's also one of the reasons why we believe so much in short form audio. Because if people see a 45-minute podcast, it's a kind of pretty big commitment to even press play. But if they see a clip which is maybe 45 seconds, it's the incentive for them, or the threshold is lower to get them engaged. Yeah. And the fantastic thing is, once we get that first click, people stay in average around 10 clips. So they stay in average 10 minutes. And forget about that they're listening almost, if you see what I mean,
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for audio offering to kind of find easier ways into the audio instead of having these huge chunks all the time.
Okay, there's then content side of things. Yeah.
But maybe
go ahead.
Maybe adding to your question about the competition with the American companies. And I think it's also important to emphasize the fact that it's a very unbalanced and unfair competition, because we're not facing the competition from equal media companies. We are facing them with them having a kind of unfair advantage, because they do distribute content, and at the same time they own the relationship with the user, and they own the distribution platform. So it's quite easy to distribute content if you own 1 billion devices, and you logically prioritize your own content or the things you would like to get across. And this is something we really have to be careful that we are still visible on these platforms. We have to be found on these platforms in order to be able to connect with our audience and to get our content across. I think it's a very important point.
This morning we had a head of audio of the Financial Times, and she shared that they got approached by Apple, be exclusive to our Apple offering. They said no, because they have their own distribution network. But this game is going on right now, right? It's just trying to get the best shows to promote the platform, not to promote the show, but to promote the platform. I mean, as a public broadcaster, it's very easy to say no. But if you are, depending on all kinds of revenues, it can be very interesting and attractive to, do that story. Francesco, is the...
I'm listening to you and agree with you when you talk about the broadcast and the broadcast situation. So, of course, we know very well that American players are very strong, not just on audio, but, we test every day also on video, and Italian is
the language is a fantastic advantage. Absolutely,
The language can support us, of course, but I think that we have a very, very strong position in terms of deeper content, quality of content. It's very, very important. Something that we have seen with research, just not on video, but also on audio. The quality of content can drive the listen. It's very important. Consider that we started with the radio several years ago before the television, so we have a huge number of content. So as I say, starting the conversion, it's very important that the kind to use the content. So now you can listen maybe a content very old. You can watch on your mobile. You can comment. It's really, really amazing. And I think for Italian people, this is my opinion, of course, it's very important to create engaging emotion with the premium quality content in different areas, because I can talk about everything. Talking with the kids, with the business, the weather, the food.
Yeah, you've got kids channels as well, right? Yeah.
I don't want to be arrogant, but we are.
Own your
I'm very lucky because working on this media.
Okay, well, there's two more things I would like. First of all, is the opportunities. Where is the biggest opportunity right now, and what needs to happen to realize it? And the other thing is, I'm really curious about what all of you guys think about what's the new tech coming. I like to, because all the time tech creates new platforms and new opportunities, and it results in new content offerings and new business models or consumer models. Both of them are super interesting to hear what you do, because you all are researching this. But first of all, the biggest opportunity right now in short term, what's the biggest opportunity? Who wants to go first? I gave you almost 40 minutes to think about, I said at the beginning. Olle, where do you think is the biggest opportunity right now?
I think the biggest opportunity
is go ahead. Yeah.
What we're currently experiencing, that audio is conquering any new platform. I mean, audio 10 years ago was of course not a niche, because it was mainstream and broadcasting, but now audio is everywhere. It's on mobile phone. It will be introduced to Facebook. It's on smart speakers. We have fancy new devices. We have Clubhouse and all the upcoming clones now. So audio is the technology of the moment, especially with voice enabling devices. I think this is a thrilling thing, and that's the opportunity.
Yeah. So go ahead, Chris.
I would say I would agree with absolutely that. There's fantastic opportunities with all these platforms to connect with audiences. And I would say this, wouldn't I, as the person who looks after local radio, but we can be even more local than we currently are, because we don't have to build a big radio station. We can supply the content in lots and lots of different ways, and so you get a much more personalized service and a much more local.
How local do you get right now? Do you get to the level of one street or one
Well, it's not quite
or...
one street, but if we take, for example, we've got 39 local radio stations across England. During COVID, we launched 3 more local services to cope with the variations of lockdown and how areas were impacted. We're now looking at potentially, what could 6 new services look like? But rather than thinking of them as 6 new radio stations, 6 new local services, highly local, would you go for something built around sport? Would you go for something built around news? Would it be for that new wave of storytellers who just want to tell their story in their way? So it's looking at these platforms and technologies and how we can surface that content in a really local way, and maybe potentially connecting with audiences who perhaps didn't think the BBC was for them, but thought it was people over there, but not for people like me, because of that authenticity of voice, which is so important. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and I'm genuinely, and I'm not sitting here with sort of rose-tinted glasses on, but I think if we seize those opportunities, there are lots of things we can do to develop audio to make it relevant. But I think we can really increase our localness, which I'm very excited by.
And this is strange, but 20 years ago or something, I wrote a little piece saying, why is there not a news service based on zip code, and not the zip code of my home, but the zip code of the route I take every day through the city? Because, there are 20 zip codes that I move around it.
And you
can do it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
we can increase that localness. So if you look across the whole of England, we've got 2,500 members of staff. We've got more journalists on the ground across England than almost any other broadcaster. So that's a massive opportunity. But again, it goes back to something that Olle was talking about. You've got to take those stories and make sure they can go in lots of different areas. And that is about the storytelling. So, and I do believe also allowing our audience to tell their stories their way too.
Okay, so very local. Olle, where do you think we should go from here? What is the opportunity?
I think that Christian expressed it so well. He said that we're going from broadcast to personal audio, and in that whole space around kind of this more personalized or personal audio experience, we're just kind of scraping the surface there, For example, at Swedish Radio, we have developed something that we call our public service algorithm, which is a system where we can actually kind of attach an editorial value to each news clip. And through that system, we can kind of make a more sophisticated personalization and mix between different types of contents for different types of situations. So I think that we're going to see a lot of development in this kind of space, where it's also so important that we have that tech drive of our own, in RTL or RAI or BBC, and also that we can collaborate between the media companies, because I mean the biggest competitors are Amazon and Google and Facebook and those giants that we have from across the Atlantic. And I think the exchanges in kind of developing these personalized audio experiences are very, very important for the European audio space.
Yeah, and the corporations as well. I mean, when you say, personalized audience, it's very much about the needs of every individual user. But there's also this other, because the podcasts are so personal, I'm sure it will not be long before you will have a reality audio turn up, where you just can always follow one person, the one person you like, and you follow them around wherever they are, and you listen to what they're doing. And, so the personal is also a different kind of personal in a way. Francesco, where do you think the biggest opportunity is right now?
But the biggest opportunity now, we have the technology, we have the connection, we have the platform, and then we have to produce the right content. For me, the challenge now is the content. Again, it's very important, the personalization, the catalog, as if you have such a big number of content, short, long form, it doesn't matter. You have to find the right people to talk with. So for me, for the Italian market, the growing is quite fast. Also after the lockdown, changed experience and so on, like other countries of the Europe. Now it's the right moment, and the challenge is to take the right moment has happened on video. Audio is quite different. We have discussed with the colleague tonight, this afternoon, but it's very important. Find the right balance and identify the right content in the right position. And it seems that it's an easy job, catalog the content, you know what I mean? You have such a big number of content and so on. But again, it's a very, very interesting job for the listener to find the right way and the right position.
Okay, well, we have only a few minutes left here. So that leaves me for first, my wish is that there will be a real European exchange of fantastic content formats for audio, so that we have that, you know, we have different local things, we have different content things, that would be wonderful. And also that we, you know, this audio market is a fantastic European market. But the other thing is, the question I wanted to ask is, okay, what's the tech aspect? Where are you sending your tech teams out there? I can imagine there's lots of machine learning and AI and content discovery going on, but what other tech is there? I mean, who here wants to share that tech dream? And you've got 1 minute each, so there you go. Christian, RTL, you know, you always walk ahead of the pack when it comes to tech and platforms. You experiment, you do things. What are you looking at right now?
You mentioned it. AI is probably the biggest thing we are working on, especially with this huge amount of contents and this huge amount of users we have, and to combine this and to make also smaller contents available and searchable and findable. AI is probably the driving force of all the changes we see. And at the same time, getting the audio more and more personalized is, I mean.
And how do you do that? Do you hire a pack of AI wizards, or do you work with universities or labs, or where is the cutting edge of tech taking place in RTL?
Yeah, it's all the ones you mentioned.
Okay.
You cannot do it on your own, so it's not a question that you're of your content team. No. You really have to work with a dedicated team of first of all data engineers, because not all data is always accessible and attachable to existing operations, and then data scientists who work very closely with the content team and build, call it algorithms, or build it, call it big data or machine learning. All these models are developed by both data experts and content people.
Yeah, and I know the BBC. Yeah, the BBC does have a whole department on future tech, right?
Yep.
Do they work with you for the local?
They do. We work very close with them. In fact, I used to work in the technology division. I was never, I'm not a technologist, but one of the things I learned when I was working in that area was, and I think this is really important to capitalize on this new future, and that's where you mix teams up. You know, you make sure you've got someone perhaps who's got that voice expertise, somebody who's brilliant on data, and then you've got the content people. And I remember a story years and years ago. It was a Nike story. And it was when Nike had the bad press about use of child labor. And what they did was they created this mixed team where they had people who were involved in sustainability, people involved in tech, people involved in design. They put them all together and they created the Michael Jordan shoe. And I believe that that's kind of something that we can take away as broadcasters. So our challenge is, what's going to be the next big Michael Jordan shoe in audio?
Okay, Olle, there you go.
I think for us who that are public service broadcasters, we have to team up with each other. So for example, we're teaming up within the EBU in a very exciting project called News Pilot, where RAI is a member, also Swedish Radio, ARD, ZDF from Germany, where we're actually kind of sharing news content with each other, and also on an AI-driven platform where we can have automatic recommendations and also translated content. Okay. So pooling our resources and brains into those kind of common efforts, I think that's part of the answer for the future.
And Francesco, what tech interests you most at this point in time?
Consider that recently the digital team and the radio team work very, very, very close. That means not just for the content, of course, this is the first activity, but also on the distribution, size, and the positioning on social, and it's very important. And consider that we have a third part, very important part, that is television. So the challenge again is to find the right horizontal strategy of different media to bring each information from different screen, different platform, to find the best way to compete in different areas.
Yeah, that's the tech solution. Anyway, we're going to a world where, you know, our digital content is augmenting our lives everywhere. So I'm sure that audio will be such a big part of that augmented part as well. So wishing you lots of luck, and thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. And
thank you, Monique.